It's time for the Bison Beat with KSJB Sports Director Kyle Dean and voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane. Brought to you by First Class Aviation Maintenance and Flight School and FTC of Lisbon, North Dakota. Now, here's Kyle Dean and Jeff Culhane.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Kyle Dean here with you. We're online at KSJBAM.com. And it is the Bison Beat for today on your October 12th. And on the phone with us is the one and only voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing today?
Kyle, it's great to be with you. Always good talking to you, even after you had a sauerkraut lunch. That's fantastic.
Yes, I was just down in Wishick, hurried up back here and get ready for the Bison Beat, and it was delicious. So, like you said before we went on air, hopefully you can't smell it through the phone line,
That's
right?
That's correct. You got it.
Well, it's been a busy week for for the Bison now as they're preparing for the Dakota Marker game, which will be the 13th annual Dakota Marker game. Before we start talking about that game, let's talk about some of the FCS scores like we do usually. What happened around the conference for this last weekend?
Well, Youngstown State, Kyle, continues to prove themselves around the league. They went on the road to Illinois State and beat the Redbirds 20-6. And Bo Pelini's defense has not yet given up a rushing touchdown this season. That's the only team in the FCS that has that mark, and that's pretty darn impressive. So, they are a squad that I thought would be a sleeper team before the season started. They're more than that. They're a team that I think is headed back to the playoffs for the first time in quite a while, and they've done some good things. South Dakota State offensively is very good right now. They went to Carbondale and beat Southern Illinois by the score of 45-39. So the Jackrabbits are scoring in bunches with Taryn Christian throwing 20 touchdowns and just one interception here this season.
Wow.
Western Illinois survived Indiana State 36-35. It was a game the Sycamores, I thought, should have won. They mismanaged the football game late in the fourth quarter, which led to a Western Illinois victory. And then South Dakota, the Coyotes got a big win over Northern Iowa at the Dakota Dome in Vermillion this last weekend. A nice win for Bob Nielsen in year number 1 at USC, and continues to make you scratch your head about UNI, about their team this year. It's definitely been a roller coaster season.
Mm-hmm. And, I was looking at the future schedule for the Bison, and I believe all the other teams are ranked for the remainder of the schedule at this point in the top 25. Am I mistaken or no?
Well, UNI is not. Northern Iowa,
okay.
2-3 right now, and they have a big game at Youngstown State this weekend. So, UNI has lost a few games. They've got to win this upcoming weekend. But outside of Northern Iowa and Indiana State, I think USD may be receiving some votes as well. You're correct. The Bison do play some good teams.
All right, so now, before we get to this game, we have to talk about last week's game. I was listening to it, and the first half was kind of rough for the Bison, it looked like, before the defense, of course, held throughout the game. But what they were missing some people, weren't they? Like Chase Morlock, I believe, was gone for that game, too?
Yeah, he was, Kyle. Chase, his father, Paul, passed away on Saturday. Paul's been battling cancer. Just last week took a turn for the worse, and it was tough. It's been tough on the Morlock family. It's been a tough week for Chase. It's been a tough time for the Bison football family as well. And Chase did not make the trip as he was with his family, and rightly so, last weekend. Garrett Malmstrom, who played pretty well in his first career start against Illinois State a couple of weekends ago, he got hurt the week of practice. So the Bison were down a little bit offensively at fullback. Caleb Butler filled in. Jeff Ilias and others took some snaps at the fullback position. And it was a little slow starting. Missouri State's an improved football team. They're better than what they were a year ago. They're going to give some people problems in the next couple of seasons. But the Bison got it going. Defensively, they were great all day. And then the rushing game and the offensive line wore down Missouri State up front and allowed NDSU to propel themselves to that 27-3 win last weekend.
And it was a great win for them. They improved the 2-0 in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And actually, this weekend's game versus SDSU, I believe they're 2-0 in the conference, aren't they?
Yeah, correct. The Jackrabbits the Bison and Youngstown State are all 2-0, the only undefeated teams left in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And it's a big game for South Dakota State from the perspective of, I think, the mental health of their fan base. They're tired of feeling like little brother to North Dakota State. There's definitely an inferiority complex, as NDSU has won the last 8 games. They've won the last 6 Dakota marker games. And last year down in Brookings, it was a beatdown. It was a dominating effort in the trenches, both offensively and defensively, en route to that 28-7 victory. So for South Dakota State, it's a big game. They are 3-2 right now. A win at North Dakota State would pretty much lock up a playoff bid for them, barring a meltdown the rest of the way. But a huge game for John Stiglmeier's football team.
And, the Dakota marker, it's, I believe, the 13th annual, I said. And the trophy itself is like a 75-pound replica of a mile marker, if I'm not mistaken, right?
You know what? I think you're correct. I honestly don't know the ins and outs of the trophy. I know it's 75 pounds. I know it started back in 2004 when both these teams made the jump to Division I together and transitioned from Division II. I believe you're right. I think it has something to do with a mark on the border of the Dakotas, north and south, in farmland in a portion of the state along the border. So, yeah, it's got semblance of a little bit of tie between North Dakota and South Dakota, and it's been stuck in Fargo for the last 6 seasons.
And actually doing a quick Google search here, they say that it's a replica of the original quartzite monuments placed at the half-mile intervals along the border in the summers of 1891 and 1892. So it's a lot of history with that then. A quick Google search. You got to love that sometimes.
You got to love it.
Yes.
Always good to have that.
Well, when we come back, Jeff, after our break, we're going to talk a little bit more about this upcoming game for South Dakota State as they come in at the 11th ranked team, I should say, in Fargo this weekend. We'll be back with more Bison Beats here on AM 600 KSJB.
Did you ever look to the skies and dream of flying an airplane? Quit dreaming and contact First Class Aviation to schedule your discovery flight, where a first-class instructor will take you up in one of their airplanes. Call 952-1515, 952-1515. Aircraft maintenance is also available. Just call to schedule your aircraft. And they offer aircraft rental, too. Owners are NDSU Bison team makers at First Class Aviation, Flight School, and Aircraft Maintenance at Jamestown Airport. Go Bison!
Don't give up on your soybeans too early. Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with Hefty Seed Company. Far too often we see yield left on the table because either the growing season just wore people down or they simply were tired of spending more money. If a $5 investment turned into $10 to $40 in a month, would you do it? To find these opportunities, keep scouting your fields all the way until the soybeans start to turn yellow. There's a potential for a very nice crop. Don't leave yield on the table by giving up on your soybeans too early. Call 1-800-27-HEFTY for the answers to your agronomic questions.
We're back for the Bison Beats here on AM 600 KSJB, online today at ksjbam.com, as we are talking to voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane, and he is preparing for this weekend's game in Fargo versus South Dakota State. Hey, Jeff, once again, thank you for joining us here on this afternoon.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. It's always a big game when the Jackrabbits and the Bison get together in a series that's been dominated by North Dakota State. As of late, they look to continue that domination on Saturday afternoon.
And I was doing a little bit of research, and they said this is like the 105th meeting between these two teams since 1903. And they also said this is the 14th most played series among FCS schools. So a heated rivalry, you could say.
Yeah, it's the 105th meeting like you talked about. And, the rivalry's interesting with the way you look at it. Obviously, during the Division II days, NDSU and UND were the main rivals, but I think this was something that was created, when both of these teams went from Division II to Division I, to, especially during the tough times of transition where you weren't eligible for postseason in football, to provide a little bit more meaning into your schedule with a foe and a regional opponent like South Dakota State. So SDSU has held up their end of the bargain as far as the competitiveness of their program. They've actually been a better FCS football program than they ever were at Division II. So they've made the commitment in a lot of ways, facilities-wise, they've made the commitment And, of course, North Dakota State has been the king of the mountain in the FCS.
And this matchup, it's in Fargo this weekend. I saw they were practicing with crowd noise in their practice dome for the Jackrabbits. And honestly, 18,000 people, you kind of have to practice under those situations.
No doubt. I mean, you have to have that type of preparation. I saw that video as well inside one of their brand new facilities. They have an indoor facility in Brookings that they use, and that's where they're working out all week this week with that piped-in crowd noise that so many teams try to mimic, but it's hard to duplicate when you get ready for the Bison and you get ready for Bison Nation. It's another gold rush. Fans will be wearing their gold and being loud and definitely being rowdy when South Dakota State has the football. But I always love, Kyle, when the Bison have the ball, it's a hush inside the Fargo Dome. You could shout across the football field to a friend if you wanted to and have a conversation.
I believe they can hear you doing the play-by-play because it's so quiet during the Bison football, right?
I wouldn't be surprised. I have been accused of being pretty loud before, so that would not be a shock.
Well, this matchup, what do you see in this matchup, or what does Coach Kleiman even see in this matchup? What players are we going to have to watch out for the Bison versus the South Dakota players?
Well, when you talk about South Dakota State, you start with their passing game. Taryn Christian's a sophomore quarterback. Recruited themselves. He ended up going to South Dakota State, and he won a quarterback battle here this season versus senior quarterback Zach Lujan, and they made the right choice. Taryn Christian has been outstanding. He's thrown 20 touchdowns to just one interception here this season. He's thrown 5 touchdown passes in each of his last 2 games, and he's got a great 1-2 combo on the receiving core with All-American wide receiver Jake Wenicky and All-American tight end Dallas Goddard. These guys know how to catch the football. They know how to get open. Wenicky has 10 touchdowns. Goddard has 8 touchdowns. They lead the FCS. They're 1-2 in touchdown receptions here this season. So when you talk about the Jacks, usually you talk running game, not this year. They like to throw the football and will do so and try and exploit whatever weakness they think they can find in the Bison secondary. On the defensive side of the football for SDSU, just a solid group. They've struggled with the run. They played a game versus Cal Poly earlier this season and really got gashed. Cal Poly's an option rushing attack, and the Jackrabbits weren't ready for it. So they've been better, but they're a team that's susceptible to the run. So I think the chess match will be, can the Bison again grind it out on the ground, keep South Dakota State's offense to the side, and when the Jackrabbits have the ball, find a way to get to Taryn Christian and make life uncomfortable.
And I was reading that the NDSU defense, they like to cash in on those turnovers for this season, from what I read.
Well, they've been better as of late. They were able to get 4 takeaways last week after really starting out probably a little slower than what they wanted to. So the Bison right now are +4 in the turnover margin, which is one of the best in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. But the front 4 of this defensive line, both the first team and the second team, there's not a drop-off from the first 4 to the second 4. This defensive line is pretty impressive to say the least, and that will be a big part. Can they just rush 4 and get to Taryn Christian and make him feel under duress? That'll be a big key to slowing down and altering the South Dakota State passing attack.
And, yeah, like you said, that passing attack is pretty potent. They've been in quite a few shootouts, too, or a lot of scoring points throughout the season, you said. So that's the main key, right, is just got to stop him.
Well, they hammered Western Illinois when the Leathernecks were undefeated coming into Brookings. They beat them up pretty good, and they put 45 points on the board versus Southern Illinois this past weekend. So South Dakota State scoring the football right around 45 points per ball game right now. Those are big-time numbers. They went down to TCU in Fort Worth and hung right with, at that time, the number 12 ranked Horned Frogs of the FBS in the Big 12.
Yep.
So it's a talented South Dakota State team that can definitely get the job done through the air, light up the scoreboard as they have this season.
All right, Jeff. Well, before we go, what time is the pregame this Saturday, and what time's kickoff?
That pregame begins right here at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. on Saturday, and kick is set for 2:30 with the Dakota Marker game right here on KSJB.
So hopefully it stays in Fargo, right?
That's exactly correct.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, Jeff. It's always fun talking to you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday, all right?
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Hey, have a great game this Saturday.
Thank you.
Bye. That's once again the voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane, for today's Bison Beats here on KSJB.